Dear students, welcome to first semester MA English Literature class. In this class, we are going to look onto the paper British Literature 19th Century. So before moving on to the class, let me introduce myself. I am Doyle Jobin Jacob, Assistant Professor of School of Distance Education, English, University of Calicut. So first, let me have a brief introduction of this paper. This paper provides a brief overview of 19th century British literature. This paper has been divided into three sections, of which the first section deals with poetry, beginning with Blake and ending with D.G. Rossetti. The next section deals with one of the most prominent plays of Victorian period. The final section deals with three novels and two prominent prose works. We recommend you to use this class as a mere outline which has to be supplemented with extra reading. The famous writer of Georgian era, William Blake, was born in the year 1757 in London. His first poems were first published in the year 1783. He was influenced by Nazism. His poems remain especially popular for its short sentimentality and rich symbolism. He died in London in the year 1827. Some of his famous works are The Ancient of Days, The Ghost of a Flea 1820, Newton 1795, Albion Rose 1795. So let's begin. Start with the poem. The Lamb was included in the collection Songs of Innocence published in 1789. So it is written in the form of a dialogue between the lamb and the child. So the poem is an amalgam of Christian script and pastoral tradition. The lamb is a universal symbol of selflessness and innocence. The lamb is identified in this poem with Christ, and this poem forms a trinity of the child, the lamb, and Christ the Redeemer. The Lamb by Blake is a warm and curious poem that uses the lamb as a symbol for Christ. Throughout the two stanzas of the poem, the poet speaks to the lamb, asking it if it knows who is responsible for creating it. It goes into vague details about Christ and his nature. So, analyzing the poem, in the first stanza of this poem, Blake uses the child who is speaking to the lamb to give a brief description of the little animal which he sees. The lamb has been blessed with life and with capacity to feed by the stream and over the meadows. It has been endowed with bright and soft wool which serves as its clothing. It is also blessed with a tender voice which fills the valley with joy. So this tender voice is also attributed to Christ. So in the second stanza of the poem, there is an identification of the lamb with Christ, and Christ has been given the name the lamb in the biblical context. The child in the poem speaks to the lamb as if the lamb were another child and could respond to what is being said. So in this poem, very craftfully or very brilliantly, the poet amalgamate the three images, that is of Christ, the child, and that of lamb, which has the characteristic features of simplicity, innocence, all those characteristics. So coming to the main themes of this poem has two major themes. They are innocence and childhood. So I hope you students have understood this poem. So let me conclude here. Thank you all. Dear students, now we are going to see section A, poetry. So the other poem written by William Blake is Tiger, that has been going to discuss in this class. The Tiger is arguably the most famous poem written by Blake. The first question that occurs when reading this poem is that whether the same God who created the soft and calm lamb has created the tiger. When we see the image of a lamb, what comes to our mind first is peace of this world. On contrary, tiger depicts fearfulness and terror. While comparing this poem, one could see two aspects of this world or of human existence, that is, of good and evil simultaneously. So, what one could conclude that God, who made the peaceful animal, the lamb, is the same one who made the fearsome tiger. So, from this poem, we could note that there is the coexistence of good and evil as well as light and darkness. So these famous poems, The Lamb as well as the Tiger by William Blake, has to be read together. These poems very well depicts the existence of this world, the duality of this world, or the duality of human existence. That's what said in this poem very clearly. So I hope you students could understand my class. Thank you all. Well, students, we are moving to the next poem, that is Lines Composed a Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey, written by William Wordsworth. So, looking to the short biography of Wordsworth, Wordsworth was an English romantic poet hailing from the Lake District of England. Both Wordsworth and Coleridge together published lyrical ballads. Wordsworth's greatest work, The Prelude, was also dedicated to Coleridge. Wordsworth's style of writing is very easy to understand even today. The romantic, talking about the romantic poets, what they emphasize or what they give importance is to feelings, emotions, and instinct rather than going for vague details. This is what they focus on. So let's have a simple analysis of the poem. The full title of this poem is Lines Composed a Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey on revisiting the banks of Wye during a journey, July 13, 1798. The speaker then goes on to describe how his memories of the beautiful scenery there had worked upon him during his absence from there. The speaker differentiates between the way he enjoyed nature as a child and how he enjoyed it now. He trusts nature and calls it a dear friend and even a sister. This is all about the poem. So, These are the so analyzing this poem, one could see the main characteristic features of a romantic poem. So it mainly focuses on appreciating beauty and appreciating nature, the different elements of nature. Poets like Wordsworth, Coleridge, Keats, all these poets did the same. So I hope you could understand this poem well. Okay then, thank you. So we are moving to the next poem, that is Kublakhan by S.T. Coleridge. So a few biographical details. S.T. Coleridge, rather known as Samuel Taylor Coleridge, was born on October 21st, 1772 in England. He was a lyrical poet, critic, and philosopher of the Romantic age. He was, in fact, one of the founders of the Romantic movement. Some of his best known poems are The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, Kublakhan, Biographia Literaria. So coming to the poem, Kubla Khan. Kubla Khan was first published in the collection Christabel. Kubla Khan remained an incomplete poem of 54 lines, which is subtitled as A Vision in a Dream, a Fragment. The poem describes Xanadu, the palace of Kubla Khan, a Mongol emperor. The setting of the emperor's palace is described as a pleasure dome. The sense of calmness in the first few lines of the poem slowly turns into a sense of fear when the poet brings in the image of pagan and supernatural elements. Kubla Khan is listening to the noisy river and thinking about war. The speaker then shifts the subject of the poem from third person to first person and narrates another vision he had had, where a beautiful Abyssinian maid is seen playing an instrument and singing. The poem ends by turning more personal as well as mysterious and ultimately ends with an image of a terrifying figure with flashing eyes with an almost godlike man. So this poem, Kubla Khan, it is very mysterious. One could say it is so very mysterious in nature to be understood. But I hope you students have caught up with the poem. So thank you all. So students, we shall move on to the next poem, that is Osimantius by Shelley. So a short biography. P.B. Shelley, otherwise known as Percy Shelley, was born in the year 1792. He started his literary career in Eton College. He published a Gothic novel, Zastrossi, in 1810. In 1830, his first poems, Queen Mab, was published. He died in the year 1822. So, going to the poem, Osimantius. Osimantius is an irregular sonnet and is probably his most famous poem. The poem is a recollection of the speaker having met a traveler who hails from an antique land. This traveler tells the speaker the story about the ruins of a statue, the statue of an Egyptian pharaoh in the desert which he belongs to. Then the poet describes the posture of the statue. Near the fallen face lines the pedestal of the statue where the traveler reads an inscription. My name is Osimantius, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. The poem's story is one of tyranny and how once powerful kings and heroes lose their significance as time passes. So it's a mockery on boastful people. So this is all about the poem, a short analysis of the poem. I hope you students have caught up with the poem. So thank you all. So we shall move on to the next poem, that is Ode to a Nightingale by John Keats. So a short biography of Keats. Keats was born on 31st October 1795. Keats wrote short poems entitled Imitations of Spenser, inspired by Spenser's Faerie Queene. His first volume of poems were published in March 1817. The first of his greatest odes are Ode to Psyche, Ode to a Grecian Urn, and Ode to a Nightingale, published in the year 1819. His only drama is titled Otho the Great. He died in the year 1821 in Rome. So first, let me introduce what is an ode. An ode is a Greek form of poetry that usually celebrates a person, a thing, or an event to which it is dedicated to. So in this poem, Keats celebrates and hails the nightingale's voice. The poem begins by describing the song of a nightingale as almost intoxicating. The effect of the nightingale's, let me repeat the previous sentence. The effect of the nightingale is both physical and mental to the poet. Then he yearns for someone. So the poet also points out the temporariness of this worldly life. What the poet tries to convey is that this world holds to sorrows, worries, and unhappiness. Even natural beauty in this world does a natural death. Using the poetic imagination, he then reaches the world of the nightingale. He says that he wouldn't mind if he dies in the forest listening to the voice or the beautiful song of the nightingale. Death is here personified. He then differentiates between the immortality of the song of the nightingale and mortality of his life. Then the bird flies and the word forlorn brings him back to the real world of consciousness. And he then bids goodbye to the enchanting world of nightingale. The poem poses question whether this life on earth is permanent, or what does the song of the nightingale means to us. So he distinguishes in this poem, the poet distinguishes between the temporary and the permanent life. Okay, I hope you all understood the poem well. So thank you all. So we are going to the next poem, that is She Walks in Beauty by Lord Byron. So a short biography of Lord Byron. Lord Byron is a romantic poet who is famously described as bad, mad, and dangerous to know. He authored a series of poems. She Walks in Beauty is one of his shorter poems. It is widely thought to be an ode to his half sister Augusta, with whom he is alleged to have an affair. He died in the year 1824. So coming to the poem is written in 1814 and was first published in 1815. This poem praises and seems to sketch out the beauty of a particular woman. The speaker compares this almost divine-like woman to a lovely night with a clear starry sky. Given that Byron met Mrs. Wilmot while she was in mourning, this darkness could also point her emotional state of being at the emotional state of mind. So her beauty is described as a harmonious meeting between darkness and light. So, towards the end of the poem, the speaker points out that the physical beauty of this lady is also a representative of her inner beauty and innocence. Throughout the poem, there is a contrast between light and darkness, day and night. One of the major themes of this poem is the beauty and harmony of both mind and body. So, what the poet tries to mean or tries to convey in this poem is not the physical or physical beauty or the beauty of your attire, but the inner beauty. That's what is meant in this poem. So, that's all about this poem. Thank you all. So, going to the next poem, that is Tithonus by Alfred Lord Tennyson. So, a short biography of Tennyson. Tennyson was born in Lincolnshire. He won the Poets Laureate in the year 1850. His, he is considered as a central poet of 19th century. His first solo collection titled Poems Chiefly Lyrical that was published in the year 1830. He wrote a series of historical verse plays which is Queen Mary, Becket, etc. He died in the year 1892. So going to the poem Tithonus. Tithonus is a figure from Greek mythology like Ulysses. The poem describes the fate of Tithonus, who is gifted to remain immortal, but it becomes a curse for him. So it is written in the form of a dramatic monologue and first written with the title Theton. The poem begins with the speaker describing the naturally aging woods and how sad it makes him. Unlike other elements of nature, he is destined to stay immortal or not to die. He narrates the story where Aurora gives him the gift to stay immortal. While giving this gift or granting this gift, she forgets to maintain or retain his youthfulness. So this is what is described in this poem. This poem is so the content of this poem is taken from Greek mythology. So as the poem continues, Tithonus he realizes the mistake that he has made. So every single day he pleads to her Aurora that to take back what she had given him. So the poem concludes with the speaker asking Aurora to free him from the east where he has been imprisoned. Now he yearns for death. So this is all about the poem. Thank you all. So we are moving to the next poem, that is Fra Lippo Lippi by Robert Browning. So a short biography of Browning. Browning is the most famous and widely read poets of the Victorian era. Some of his major Dramatic monologues include My Last Touches, Fra Lippo Lippi, and Porphyria's Lover. He died in the year 1889. So let's begin with the poem. This poem is believed to have inspired Browning's visit to Florence, where he saw one of the Lippo Lippi's paintings called The Coronation of Virgin. This poem is a dramatic monologue which was published in the year 1855 in a collection called Men and Women. So let's see what a dramatic monologue is. It is a poetic form and not a dramatic art. It is a speech in the form of poetry addressed to a silent listener. So that's a brief, very brief about dramatic monologue. So going directly into the poem. So Lippo Lippi is a monk come painter who lived in the 15th century. The poem begins when the monk is caught at night by the gods. So let me repeat. So this monk was caught at night by the gods of his patron. So he then begins justifying himself for being there at night, partying or visiting brothels. He tells them how hard life as a monk is, how his parents died while he was very young, leaving him an orphan and begging and roaming in the streets. So until he was taken by his aunt, where he could eat and drink, fulfilling its needs for the first time. Then they tried to teach him Latin. It was in vain. They found that he was talented in painting and decided to make him focus on what painting. So at the end of the poem, he bids goodbye to the gods. He slips into the Medici palace, where he stays and asks them to turn off the torch, as he doesn't need light to find his way in. So towards the end of the poem, the end lines of the poems very clearly depict the nature of the speaker. So he doesn't want light to be shown in his way. Something is there, some mystery or secret is there in his ways or in his affairs. That's what is very beautifully depicted in this poem by Browning. So that's all about this poem. I hope you understood this poem well. Thank you all. So going to the next poem, that is a musical instrument by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. So a short biography of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. She is a London poet whose reputation rests largely upon her love poems. So in 1833, Barrett Browning published Prometheus Bound. So she died in the year 1861. So coming to the poem describes the crafting of God Pan's flute. So the poem begins with the speaker's description of how God Pan was seen searching beside the river for something. So there is a destructiveness in his action, and it shows selfish disregard of him for nature. Here she is referring to the patriarchal nature of the society, where women are considered as mere possessions. So yes, even now in this 21st century, we are living in a mere patriarchal society. So the reed, which symbolizes women, is molded into a musical instrument which others could play and derive pleasure from. Thus, the stereotypical notion of female as mere sufferer and victim in the hands of men are eluded in this poem. So this poem also points out to the existence of the idea of destructive nature of men towards nature. So two things have been mainly focused or explained in this poem. That is one, that of the suppression of women, or how women have been oppressed in a patriarchal society, how they have been merely considered as an instrument alone. That is one idea. The other idea is that of nature. So how men have a destructive mentality towards nature. So that's all about this poem. Thank you. So the next poem is Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold, a short biography of Arnold, a British poet and a critic who belongs to the Victorian age. So some of his major works include Culture and Anarchy, Literature and Dogma, On Translating Homer, Essays in Criticism. He died in the year 1888. One of the recurring themes in his poems are man's lonely state and search for inner self in this modern world. So coming to the poem was published in 1867 in the collection called New Poems. It was written a few weeks after his marriage and is believed to have addressed to his wife. The setting of the poem is the core of the English ferry port of the Dover in Kent, hence the title Dover Beach. The main concern of this poem is the speaker's struggle with life, love, and faith in religion. The poem starts with a calm beach at. Let me please continue. The poem starts with a calm beach at night. Waves in this poem is used as an allusion to represent joy and pain of relationship, which may lead to unhappiness or bliss as well. In the third stanza of the poem, he goes back to a distant land. In the next stanza, Arnold speaks about the nature of the crisis facing the Victorian period. Using the imagery of the sea, he laments that faith in religion was once at the fall and let me repeat, quoting lines, at the full, the round and earth's shore. So in the last part of the poem, Arnold introduces two new elements with the thought structure of the poem. One is the identity of the poet's companion. The other is the image of the world as a battlefield. So here, world is seen as a mere battlefield. Yes, of course, a very beautiful comparison. The speaker is also referring to industrial revolution and the way it has robbed the world in whole, robbed the beliefs, faith, or all of the people, pushing the world into a religious crisis. The last lines convey chaos and aggression. So the poem refers to the change that has come over with the advancement of science and knowledge, how this advancement has resulted in religion being questioned. One of the major themes of this poem is love. Other than love, some other themes occur. They are here. The tide. So some other than love, some other themes also occur. So here in this poem, the tide leaving the shore symbolizes the loss of faith. Throughout the poem, there seems to be clashes between opposing forces like light and darkness, harmony and chaos. So that's all about this poem. So very beautifully the poet have depicted this poem. So clashing images or clashing elements are also introduced in this poem, like light, darkness, harmony, chaos, all those things. This is what occur in everyone's life in large. So I hope you understood this poem. Thank you all. So moving to the last poetry of this section, The Blessed Damsel by D.G. Rossetti. So a short biography of the poet. D.G. Rossetti, otherwise known as Dante Gabriel Rossetti, was born in London to Italian parents. He is a co-founder of Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood along with other painters in 1848. This poem is one of Rossetti's early poems, which therefore shows strong pre-Raphaelite influences. So Rossetti died on April 1882 in England. So moving to the poem, The Blessed Damsel is a traditional ballad. This ballad narrates the story of a love between a woman trapped in heaven and a man stuck on earth. The speaker here describes a woman who is leaning out from heaven with flowers in her hands. Although she is described as extremely beautiful, she looks melancholy as well. So there seems to be a lover on her earth who is heartbroken by her departure back to heaven. They both yearn to reunite together. So both the lovers, they very badly yearn to reunite together. Although it seems to have been just one day since she got to heaven, it has actually been 10 years. There are other lovers around her who have reunited with those they had loved. This only further deepens her sorrow and reminds her about her loss. When the damsel speaks aloud for everyone to hear, her words are unclear and seems like the stars singing. She is hopeful of their reunion as they both have prayed to God for it. She hopes to teach him the songs of heaven. Her lover doubts whether they would forever reunite, as he has never done anything worthy enough in this life. So as the poem continues, the wife, wishes to show him, the lover wishes to show him everything in heaven when he reaches there. She hopes to introduce her lover to Christ and the Virgin Mary, who will hopefully bless the lovers. Unfortunately, all these hopes remain mere hopes and not reality. Once the damsel returns back to reality, she breaks down and weeps for, for their separation, which is unbearable. So, in this poem, the poet speaks about the separation of two lovers, one in heaven and the other on earth. So, how they yearns to be reunited, how they yearns to continue their love. That's what is depicted in this poem. Hope you understood this poem. Thank you all.